Hey everybody, Guilty here, and I'm still recovering from the flu, but I feel well enough to say I'm back with my best episode yet of Ninja Gaiden Black by the numbers. It's been a number of months since the last episode. I have to admit, I've replayed this chapter many times to get the right footage. Footage that didn't inundate me with hits I couldn't track or damage I couldn't properly keyframe. Because what did I say last episode? This series is about sweet, ooey-gooey analytic action, and I'm an obsessive compulsive. I mean, I want to give you the numbers for shit like Ice Storm or Fire Wheels, but when I can't accurately track what enemy is getting hit and the hits are just popping up from 1 to 20 in like a fucking microsecond, well, it's just back to the drawing board for me, you know, and that just drives me insane. And with all that being said, why do I still like this episode so much? I figured out a more efficient method for recording enemy health and the damage values done to the applicable enemy, and it made keyframing both numbers, the most time-consuming aspect of these videos, a lot easier to set up. I also added the names of the bosses in their original Japanese, pulled straight from the official complete guide, and I've simply been looking forward to sharing my discoveries regarding those bosses, the Thunderbolt Worms and the Demon God Pazuzu. So, defense buffs or damage reduction, however you want to look at it, it's nothing new around here. I recall the horses from Chapter 2 having high defense against arrows, but the dragon sword cut through them just fine. That same rule, as it were, returns in Chapter 10, the Aqueduct. I used the Debilero against the first Thunderbolt Worm, and noticed it was doing less damage than it was supposed to. But in the fight underground against the Twin Worms, I used the Dragon Sword, and there was no damage reduction at all. Pazuzu was even stranger. I couldn't ascertain how I was even getting the numbers I was seeing in the first place. So I thought about it for a moment, and then a moment longer, and I'm still kind of thinking about it now. And it seems to me that there are a couple different damage reduction formulas at play. Maybe to keep weapons balanced, there's a damage cap specifically implemented for bosses. I don't know. What I do know is there is more going on under the hood than I previously thought. The Debilero, for instance, could have kept things simple with one percentage-based reduction, but no, there are two. For example, the level 3 Debilero does 400 damage with one press of the X button. Against Pazuzu, that strike's efficacy is first multiplied by 90%, then multiplied again by 10%. What happens when you multiply something by a percentage? Well, you're calculating a portion of the whole. Ryu's strikes were ultimately being reduced from the initial 400 to a paltry 36. What about the Dragon Sword? Well, that one's more straightforward. 10% efficacy, or 90% off the top, however you want to look at it. Rather than a level 3 Crimson Lotus Slash doing 160, 160, 240, Ryu was limited to 16, 16, 24. The results were similar with the Lunar, the Warhammer, the Flails. I even labbed the Nunchaku too. But you know when Ryu was able to do full damage? Not just when Pazuzu was knocked down and vulnerable, but anytime he was struck in the head. When experimenting with the Nunchaku, I jumped high enough to hit Pazuzu in the face with Sweeping Strike, and you know what? It registered the full 50 points. I immediately followed up with Emperor's Descending Dragon Kick and made contact with his head again, dealing the full 300 points. Pazuzu was standing tall, but I was doing full damage. In another example, I jumped to throw the Windmill Shuriken. It struck Pazuzu right in the schnoz and registered the full 200 points. Immediately afterward, a hit to the leg only registered 20. Going back a few minutes, I think there is a damage cap of sorts, because even when Pazuzu is in his vulnerable state, Debilero's attacks were never at 100% strength. Only that 90% damage reduction was lifted. The 10% cut was hard imposed. Anyway, you'll see all this for yourself as soon as I stop talking, so maybe I should wrap things up. Today, as I said, we're in Chapter 10 on normal difficulty. The Vigorian military is in the dark. Ryu destroyed their communications backbone and left a twisted mess of snarled trains in the center of the city. Free of his pursuers, he returns to his hunt for the path that will lead to Zarkin and Doku. In this chapter, I encountered 64 flare shadows, 30 forsaken beasts, 12 Bitsu flies, 3 thunderbolt worms, and as we've already discussed, the end chapter boss, the demon god, Pazuzu. There are also 2 annihilation battles, Zenmetsu Batoru, that I count separately from the main chapter encounters. Of the flare shadows, 6 had 700 health points, 49 had 800 health points, and 9 had 1,000 health points. Of the bugs, 21 had 450 health points, and 9 had 500 health points. And of the Bitsu flies, 11 had 400 health points, and only 1 had 560 health points. I guess that guy was the one calling the shots. Regarding the annihilation battles, the Ancient Stratum challenge consisted of 60 Forsaken Beasts. 41 had 450 health points, and 19 had 560 health points. The Peristyle Passage challenge consisted of 60 flare shadows. 6 had 700 health points, 50 had 800 health points, and 4 had 1,000 health points. What to make of this data? Well, I started Chapter 10 with the level 2 Debilero, and that is more than enough to dispatch a flare shadow, and practically everything else in this chapter. The basic string, Army Destroying Slash, inflicts 1,200 damage and consists of a wide arc capable of catching multiple enemies in its wake. Adding essence to the mix only makes it worse, for the demons, I mean. 100 Demon Slash is a contained shaft of 1,050 damage, but Asura Slash is a fanning flame of devastation, capable of dealing 1,500 points of damage to anything swallowed by it. All 3 Thunderbolt worms have the same health values, 5,500 points, and they all have similar damage resistance as Pazuzu. Again, possibly because there is a boss damage cap system in place. The regular attacks for the Debilero were capped to 70% damage output, as was its UT, but it's a different story for the Dragon Sword, Vigorian Flails, and other weapons. The damage output for regular attacks were unaffected. However, their ultimate techniques were altered in different ways. The Dragon Sword's UT, 100 Feather Blade, is supposed to do 400 damage per attack at level 3, but other than the opening strike, the rest were suppressed to 30% effectiveness. The Nunchaku's Gathering Clouds is supposed to open with a 200 damage hit and follow with a series of 50-point hits. But against the worms, those 50-point hits were cut down to 30 points. That's 60% effectiveness. Same story with the Flails and the Lunar's Veiled Shadow. The Warhammer's UT, Earth-Shaking Thunderclap, is supposed to do 1,500 points of damage. Against the worms, muted to 900. This chapter has me reconsidering all the past bosses, all my past theories, and looking ahead at the bosses I know are just around the corner with suspicion. If you like what you've seen so far and you want to join the Guilty community, open the video description for an invite to the Discord server for mods, channel updates, renders, and anything else I can actually finish. I'd love to have you. Until next time, here's Pazuzu doing the moving sidewalk. Like, subscribe, and if it's not freezing out, go outside.
Hesitated. Bullseye!